Alright, welcome back. So I was harvesting lots and lots of basil out of my garden today, as I regularly do because I'm just overrun with the stuff. You know, I think a lot of people who plant basil in the garden, it's a really super easy thing to grow, but then they wind up with a whole bunch of basil and they don't even know what to do with it. So I think the easiest thing to do with it, honestly, is to make pesto. It's not too difficult. What I do is I basically just kind of peel all of the basil off the stems. I'll show you how I do that. I do typically reserve a couple of the bigger stems, and I'll just put these in a little glass of water in the fridge for use in other dishes and things like that. But I don't really need a whole lot of fresh basil on hand most of the time. So just, one or two sprigs of that will be fine. And the rest of it, especially all the stuff that I really, is really small or wouldn't really work well for, for other dishes, why not, grind it up and make a paste out of it and make basil, or make pesto, I mean. So what I've done here, I've just got a glass that works well with my immersion blender. You could very well use a food processor as well. Any of those options would be just fine. The immersion blender for me in this type of vessel works best. You'll notice I've got some pine nuts which I've toasted up just a little bit in a saute pan, throwing those in here, and I'll wind up throwing some olive oil and some Parmesan cheese as well. So, take a sprig like this. I would say the easiest thing to do is just work from kind of this top bunch and just pull it straight down. Yeah, there are tiny little bits of stem or branch or whatever in there, but honestly it's all going to get ground up, and that stuff's edible too, so why not? And then I'm gonna just kind of pinch off the top here, throw that in there, and then I've got my stack of stems. And I'll wind up mulching these or composting it, and I'll just kind of go through here with all of that. This was something that got eaten by a caterpillar. I mean, it's not pretty anymore, but why not use it? I mean, it's perfectly good. I've already washed all of this, by the way. It's one of the reasons I like having this, kind of grate kind of thing here, but you could use anything. And I just kind of wash all the basil leaves, and then they're ready to go. Got a couple of different types of basil in here also, which makes for a nice and interesting pesto. So I've got some lemon basil, some Italian basil, got some purple basil like this. They all have their own kind of interesting flavor, and so I like to kind of add a mishmash of basils into the pesto as well, because it gives it a unique flavor, a very homemade taste. Alright, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add olive oil. Use a nice high quality olive oil if you can. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use some Parmesan cheese. So this is, fresh, hard, decent quality Parmesan cheese. Doesn't need to be perfect or anything like that, but I'm going to cut that down into some little chunks, just so that the food processor or immersion blender really doesn't have to work too hard with it. Okay. And then the last thing, a pinch of salt. And some fresh ground black pepper. And that's going to be all there is to it. Now I just got to blend it all up. All right. And ultimately you wind up with something that looks like this. A thick green paste. And yeah, it's really, really delicious pesto. So, I mean, it's very simple to make. The most difficult thing is, pine nuts are not always like the easiest thing to find. But they're not impossible to find either. And, they're usually, they even have them in like the little baking section of your grocery store, next with all the other nuts. They'll have them in very, very tiny little packages there. But now I hear you. I know what you're saying. Well, now I've got a whole bunch of pesto, and what the hell am I supposed to do with all that? Well, I mean, there's a number of things you can do with this. You can put it on top of chicken. You can put it on top of steak. You can put it in pasta, of course. You can mix it into mashed potatoes, which is delicious. But, this still may be too much pesto, like, to use in one sitting. And, you may be saying to yourself, well, I love pesto, but, I mean, I don't eat it every day. What am I supposed to do with it? Well, that's a good question. What I like to do with it is freeze it. So what I do is I put it into like a little container or something like that, and then I freeze it, and then I break it off into cubes, because this makes it just a bit easier to handle. Stuff stores basically indefinitely. It's really, really easy to freeze and to handle that way. And then whenever I need it, I just take a cube or two off, and I melt that into whatever I'm doing. Oftentimes, because this is an oil base, basically, it doesn't take a whole lot to cause this to melt. So even just mixing it into some freshly cooked pasta, it'll melt right off and turn into delicious pesto sauce for you. I've got quite a bit of it, but the thing is that it keeps basically indefinitely, and it does not take up a whole lot of room. You don't need a whole lot of it to make your dishes and things like that. So this is probably the best use of it that I can imagine. And then yes, I do keep a couple of sprigs around, just in my refrigerator, just for sprucing up a dish or something like that, if I'm making something for myself. So I hope that's helpful to you. I hope that gives you some ideas as to things that you can do with your fresh out of the garden basil. You can make pesto, you can use it fresh, you can freeze the pesto, and yeah, so happy gardening. Hope that's helpful to somebody.